Lama Ngöndro Jamyang Chanza Loi Hanje Lo Zhen Nye Zhen Zha Nyen Da Nan Da Rasa Jinye Dengen Jishen Senje Nyen Jen Dong Ha Le Ban Kanda Sebe Zera Mare Mendo Endong Han Gense Tonso Kun Lai Bunje Tarze Yen Lai Zhujo Yang Den So Zhonja Je Zhui Nye Moi Nye Long Len Jien Jiang Zhong Zhong Zi Jie Mare Men Sen Dong Ai Nyong Gu Jin Ye Chen Zi Rang Zhi Dene Ta Jian San Jian Dra Se Yan Den Len Zon Jiang Se Do Wei Gu Qiu Zhai Qiu Dai Jiu Nye Yan Zhi Da Le Men Sen Jiang Bei Yang La Omaram Bazana Indian Senden Genji Gera Wensan Gendale Demo Mbarazan Kata Den Jui Shang Luen Doba Yelo Bobe Nawa Zan Doin So Hong Sen Dawra De Ba Jong Sen Trewaran De Na Wangpo Jamyang Jian Nian Men Barayang Tong Warai Shu Wen San Dur Zen Gara Shiri Sen Bema Jen Ba Ni Shu So So Nam Nyai Den Den Jan San So En Gan Dre Lama Nam Lai So Wai De Oyen Sanje Nian Tong Jie Sen Dren Jin Run Do Yan Zi Kor Dan Dra Sam Ye Ni De Den Zhe Gen Chong Jre Len Be Shab La So Wan De Jam Bai Jin La Li Me Nam Pa Ya Se Lan Je Yang Se Jo Sa Ba Kabai Den Den Ben Mai Dong A Lin Zhang Yang Yen Zi Wangpo So Wai De Kandre Long Jian Bero Nam Ban Zhong Zhen Chen Nam He Xing De Lam So Che Reme Den Zen Yan Den Jiang Zhen De Lun Zhen Ta Ye Sha Lai So Wai De Women Junji Inje Bodhan Nende Zon Sanje Genje Ngo Ransen Chungu Ngon Tenze Sawe Lame Shabla Sowan Kamjeke don da je je den do manam go ban ne sem je nam je san je sa long go cha de chi do da gi thare tambe che sam ni ne nam nyam so lam nyam so lang gi o nyam pe chang je sim sal da December sals.
So I request that everyone listen to the teaching with the motivation to establish all sentient beings who are equal in extent to space, who are all our mothers, on the level of Buddhahood. So please have the motivation that you are going to practice the path and listen to the teachings with this motivation of bodhicitta.
December che de la Tukdrup Barché Künsel di Ngöndro ma de sa jin ji jen ba chang ji so ge sa den she cha wa the res.
And the teaching today is the seed of supreme awakening, the liturgy for the preliminary practices adorned with clarifications from the Guru's heart practice, dispeller of all obstacles.
Ngöndro Barché Ngöndro Jamyang Jeding Disum, Ngöndro Soksal de Changin Ngöndro Yewa Che Nga Yoba Nane, Tarin Kapsu Papa Ngaba, Ngöndro Yewa Namares.
And for this, the general explanation of the preliminary practices, there are 5 topics. First, the explanation of the meaning of the words, preliminary practices. Then how the preliminary practices are important, the practice of the extensive, medium, and concise preliminary practices, how the preliminary practices purify obscurations and gather the accumulations, and the types of preliminary practices. And now we are on the 5th out of those 5 topics, which is the types of preliminary practices.
Ngöndro Yewa Telayang, Ngöndro Tunjing Ngöndro, Ngöndro Sumiyoga Name, Tine, Ni Kondo Shisende, Tarin Ngöshi Ngöndro Kapsu Papa Teres.
So the types of Ngöndro are the types of preliminary practices are the preliminaries of the material items, the preliminaries to the meditation session, and the preliminary to the main part. And we finished the first 2 of those, and now we're on the 3rd, the preliminaries to the main part.
Tine Ngöshi Ngöndro Telayang, Tine Tumongi Ngöndro Dan Tuminji Ngöndro Siniyores, Tei Nane Ani Tangbo, Ananzo Tuminji Ngöndro Shuwe Kapres.
So there's 2 basic types of the preliminaries to the main part. There's 2 parts to the preliminaries to the main part: the common preliminaries and the uncommon preliminaries, and we are now going through the common preliminaries.
창매기 규제 땅고 봐. 창매기 냠술랑도 주여식라 되니 되몽라기레스.
So as far as that term, a common, for these common preliminaries, this refers to the fact that these are practices that are done by everyone commonly, and they're done in common by everyone and practiced in common by everyone.
마기 인데티바네 야기 아디 조과침도 파도 상매기 냠술랑웨기 취지 인바 송상 안텔라 되몽라가레스.
And since they are practiced by everyone from the Shravakayana all the way up to the great perfection of Ati Yoga, they are called the common preliminaries because they're common to all of those practitioners.
가 대다고 디몽기 냠nen치에 취지 가르레스나 팀에탄다 로도 넘버 시시바드레스.
And so what is actually the practice or the Dharma that is common here? It is the 4 thoughts that turn the mind away from samsara.
다 로도 넘버 시 값으로 드는 거랑 저 톱차디 가르레스나 가장 거랑 저 예종 생리 도구고요레스 라서 다 예종 개발 제발라 드니 자와 잡고디 아니 가서 로도 넘버 시라 냐면 제대 아니 예종도 깨고고요레.
So what are we trying to attain by practicing the 4 thoughts that turn the mind? What is the goal? What are we trying to attain by cultivating these? It is, as I explained last time, that these allow us to attain renunciation, allow us to give rise to renunciation within ourselves. So in this way, in order to give rise to renunciation, we need to practice these 4 thoughts, which are like the root of renunciation. We need to cultivate that root of renunciation, which are these four thoughts.
아니 아랑주 비트니 로도 넘버 15달라 냠링 가세 제바이나양 드는 아랑주 길라 니종디 야게 체루 두고요.
So as much as we are able to practice these four thoughts that turn the mind, the more we can practice those, then the greater and greater and the more powerful our renunciation will be.
근데 아랑주 최디 장마 야고 제발라 아니 예중국의 요래 땅 예중 호랑 야게 야고 야그로 된다 아랑주라 예중 야고 요 말와 예중 용용 지어라 땅 예중 용용 된 안지 야게 체루 땅 구고 아랑주 지라 남상 예중 야고 야제 야디 lep투 말와 레마투디 땅 아랑주 지라 예중데 야게 체루 땅에 탑 자완다오데 된 로도 넘버시로 통요레스 로도 넘버시보디 가제 냠낸 제바이나양 텔라 때네 예중데 체루 또 그래스.
So in order to be able to practice very well and have our practice be really pure and really good, we need renunciation. That is the key factor for that. But as it is right now, we generally don't have this level of renunciation. Renunciation is not really good enough to enable our practice to be really pure and a strong practice. And this is we have maybe like a fraction of the renunciation that we need, just maybe 5 or 10% or something like that. And it's not so easy to get 100% renunciation what we need. Not so easy to get the full renunciation that we need. But what will allow us to do that is to practice these four thoughts that turn the mind. So as much as we are able to cultivate these four thoughts that turn the mind within ourselves, then the greater and the more powerful our renunciation will be. So if we have that the kind of feeling that our renunciation is not so good and we need to make it better, then this is really the method to do that, to make our renunciation better. It's the method and the pathway that we have to go down to increase our renunciation, these four thoughts that turn the mind.
가이스나 예중로 버체발라 드는 코로발라 로도 고구요. 코로발라 신바 예 신도 나랑도 줄은 예중 야고시 랩투고 그랬으나 랩투고 말해. 다 코로발레 로도 버체발라 독체기 탑 가져 열했으면 다 시열에 로도 넘버 시.
So the way that it works is that we need in order to generate renunciation, in order to get renunciation, we need to turn our mind away, reverse our mind from the direction that it's in, turn it away from samsara, so to speak. And this involves having a sense of disgust for samsara. So what this practice does, as the term describes, is that it turns our mind, reverses our mind away from samsara, gives us the sense of aversion or disgust to samsara. yeah, so these are the four kind of practices or the four thoughts that will allow us to do that.
네 지당 로도 버스게 람 시도 샤르 당 예종 개발 제발라 다람 개바 제나더니 로도 넘버 시스샤 타 로도 넘버 15대 가르스나 당보더니 다주르니까와 니와 세미다바 숨바 내준데 시바 코레 이미 대시보데라 더니 로도 저기 탑 넘버 15대 명디 되레스.
So these are the four paths or methods that will allow us to turn our mind, to reverse our mind away from samsara. And this is a more extensive method to do it, is to follow these four paths, these four thoughts to turn the mind. And so the four thoughts are the difficulty in finding the freedoms and advantages of the precious human life, and death and impermanence, and the reality of a karma, cause and effect, and the drawbacks or faults of samsara, sufferings of samsara.
네, 인디 당 예중 개발 제백이 남 개발체나 탈로도 넘버 10 공부구열에 탈로도 넘버 10에 미세 개 자도 산나 디스두바 딩보더지 공대에나 드네 코르님이다 미다바당 코르님이 니디 아니 공부구열에 다 태양 또좀 개자도 산나 드네 미다바디 다 예버도 공부구열에 담아.
So this is the extensive method to generate renunciation, is to use all four thoughts. But if this is too extensive for your situation, then the medium length, so to speak, or the medium level way to do it is to cultivate the practice of impermanence and the sufferings of samsara, or the faults of samsara, those two. And then the most concise way to do it is to cultivate the practice of impermanence, which is really the fundamental to it, really necessary.
아니 미다바디 타마곰고비 좀제 가레스나 미다시베 동알시에 송로아 타 미다바 칼레가레 시에용와이나 미다바 곰네 미다바 시에용와이나 되니 코로 동알인다 시에주고 텔라 때문에 아니 코로라 신로 교시에 되니 예전 게도기도 하는 바신.
So the reason why impermanence is fundamental to this practice is that it's just as the saying goes that if you understand impermanence, then you will understand suffering. Understanding impermanence will allow you to understand suffering. So as much as you're able to cultivate understanding of impermanence, the more you do that, then you will come to understand the faults and sufferings of samsara more and more. And this will create the aversion and disgust with samsara that we need.
타 로도 넘버 15 곰나 드니 펜도 가리가리 요바 텐조양 시트나 야부요.
So it's good for us to know what are the benefits of each of these four thoughts.
드니 다주르냐 바르카와 곰바이나 당부 드니 나랑솔랑 가와기 드니 바르도 드니 나랑솔라 취취되기 삼바기 타마 드니 취라 양죽투바 드니 차르고요.
So for the benefits of the difficulty in finding the freedoms and advantages of precious human life, the benefits of that practice are that first, we will get a real sense of joy from cultivating that understanding of the difficulty of finding freedoms and advantages. We get a sense of joy. And then in addition to that, we will also always be kind of contemplating the Dharma. We will get a real intention and interest to practice Dharma. And then finally, we will be able to actually engage in the Dharma, enter into the practice of the Dharma.
아니 체미다 바디 콤바이나 드네 만왕주기 다저디 드네 데메 마이 바 데에 지기도 고 당도 하르도 아니 나랑존다 담배 취취기 쩐리치도 타마 드네 취 인마쳐봐 취 인나시 제도바 드네 차도 보여.
So and for the benefits of contemplating death and impermanence, what this will bring to us is that first we will be able to accomplish the true kind of purpose of our life and make our life really meaningful rather than wasting it. And then in addition to that, it will allow us to be very diligent in our practice, put a lot of energy into our practice. And finally, it will allow us to be able to practice continually and to have that like a steady, really steady, continuous, strong practice.
당부 출란주 규체 버도 당부 미다바된 자니 출라주기 균낭신 제부께 버치베 규다고 지기를 했어. 바로 전지 짝체 송을 짝성도 차보로 대나신게 전지 지기를 했어. 다만 주니 년반이 독배 촉체 송을 참마더니 내로 산지지 고방도 이게 촉보양 체기를 했어.
So it's as is said in the in our text, they talk about this. They say that impermanence first will serve as the cause for us to engage in the Dharma, to enter into the Dharma, and then contemplating impermanence will be like a kind of whip. Is the image they use that will kind of urge us on. It's like it will serve as the whip of diligence. It will cause us, urge us on to put a lot of energy and more diligence in practice. And then finally, it serves as the aid for us to realize the nature of reality, the dharmatas nature of reality.
네, 좀 곰바이나 드니 당보 말아 도마로 드니 딕바방 듣기리 드니 바르도 드니 개와 듣기리 텔라 땐데 드니 토리당 타르바 탐지 쳔베 고방 법도.
And then for the benefits of the practice of contemplating the karma and the cause and results workings of karma, first of all, that will allow us to eliminate the negative actions and negativity from ourselves. And then it will allow us to accomplish a virtue and the positive actions. And then finally, it will allow us to attain the higher realms and the state of liberation and ultimately the state of omniscience and the state of Buddha.
네, 코로이니 메기 곰바이나 드니 당보 드니 코로라 직낭기 연구 드니 바르도 드니 신로당 교시기 연구 타마 드니 예중기 연구.
So then the final one, the practice of the faults and sufferings of samsara, from contemplating the faults of samsara, what this will allow us to do, the benefit from that is that first we will have a sense of a fear for the sufferings of samsara. And then we will have a sense of weariness and sadness with samsara. And finally, it will allow us to have a true renunciation.
변덕 순바대. 야, 변덕 순바대나 진행 아나운서입니다. 다저리니까 체라 롱메바 양양 공배. 체디 낭신도 송르. 다 다저리니 버까와당 치와메다바데 고미요나 드니 체디라 셴바도 그레스. 당아서 론독 넘버 시 라이죠라. 로독스 카왈라 로고도 그레스. 체디라 로도 그레스. 당고니디 다저리니 버까와당 체미데 관이 체디라 셴바 독투 그레스.
So there's a verse that talks about the contemplation on the difficulty of obtaining the freedoms and advantages and impermanence. And it says, meditating again and again on this difficulty of finding these freedoms and advantages and impermanence, and the fact that we have no time to waste.
다저리니까 체라 롱메바 양양 쳔베. 체디 낭신도. 체디 낭와 망부지어라. 데레 셴바슈에 도도 그레스. 데니 곰바이나.
So the verse goes, by contemplating it again and again, the difficulty of finding the freedoms and advantages and the fact that there's no time to waste, we will, our clinging and attachment to the experiences of this life will be reversed, be eliminated. So this is talking about this is the function of meditating on the difficulty of finding the freedoms and advantages, and of meditating on the death and impermanence, is that it allows us to give up our clinging to this life, to give up our clinging to this life and the experience of this life.
네, 렌제미르 코르에님이 남세 내 균대당 코르님이 돼서 공부하이나 치매 낭신도 체치만라 신바 체치만 코로라 신바여라 대신바데 도도 그레스 디식니들라 때네 단다 로독 남바시 라베디 딱딱레기도 로독도기도 다저니 버까와당 체미다 관이 체디라 나웨게 신바디도 내 균대당 코르님이 이게 체치마게 신바디 도소나
So then by contemplating the verse continues that it says by repeatedly contemplating the infallibility of karma, cause and effect, the fact that it's you can't cheat it, it's unfailing, there's no way to get around it. By contemplating that infallibility of karma and cause and effect and the faults and sufferings of samsara, this will reverse our clinging to the next life. So all of the four thoughts that turn the mind are fit into this verse and these concepts very nicely. The contemplating the difficulties of finding the freedoms and advantages and the death and impermanence will reverse our clinging to this life, to our own experience of this life. And then by contemplating the karma, cause and effect, and the sufferings of samsara, it will allow us to reverse our clinging to the next life.
담전예가와당 체미다관이 공용도 전리기기를 해서 담비철로 전리 첨부시키기를 해서 처벌을 믿으면 전리스 전리 첨부스비가 없어 처벌을 믿으면서나 이마직 처치 你们新巴定安安说讲，然后你们新巴的缺钱，你们西巴定安安说讲，听着没有？你们这个缺钱，你们你缺钱，你们军嘛去吧，去촉발을 봐, 촉심해 봐.
Die doesn't dan 재밌다.
재밌다 보니 좀 이렇게 그래서.
So then the benefit of generating diligence for us, allowing us to put a lot of energy into practice, it will come from contemplating the difficulty in finding the freedoms and advantages and death and impermanence, and it will help us to get to be able to have the diligence, which is a diligence which is not satisfied, or it's that you're never really satisfied with doing enough practice. You don't kind of think you've done enough. That's kind of diligence. So if we don't have this kind of diligence in which we are never satisfied, then we may practice one day, and then the next day we say, okay, I've done enough, I will just relax. And then the day after we may practice again. And then again after that, we will just take a break and not really do anything. So if this is what happens if we don't have that kind of diligence, but if we contemplate the difficulty of finding freedoms and advantages and the death and impermanence, we will be able to get this diligence, which is not satisfied, in which you're never satisfied, where we will practice continually, and that's really a continuous way rather than just being on and off.
전리 첨부 초벌을 믿는데 전리 계기도 다진한저 편도 니바기 값은 안한저 다전 니바가 보면 되는 가와기 연그레스 되는 니바디 최최되지 선바기 그레스 선바 출라 죽투기레라 전리도 계기도 와 대값 되네 미다바 고미용디 되네 다저를 되매 지금 말레스 아니 니바디 전리 치기레스 선바디 윤 맞춰봐 제도 그래서도 된들라 된데 다 단다디 전리 첨부 계기를 나야 돼.
So if we think about these benefits that Lamala had explained just a minute ago, that there's these three benefits for each of the four thoughts, we can see how the benefits of the first two thoughts will generate this kind of diligence, which is never satisfied, because by contemplating the difficulty of finding the freedoms and advantages, we will first it first allows us to have a lot of joy, gives rise to a joy in us and enthusiasm, and then it will give us this kind of intention to practice the Dharma, to always be contemplating and practicing and interested in the Dharma, the second one, and then finally it will allow us to really enter into the Dharma fully and engage in the Dharma fully. So this is, we can see that these three benefits will also give rise to diligence, this kind of diligence that's not satisfied if we have these states of mind from contemplating the difficulty of finding the freedoms and advantages. And then from contemplating death and impermanence, those benefits too give rise to this very great diligence and energy that's never satisfied, because from contemplating death and impermanence, first we really have the resolve and we'll be able to make our life meaningful and not waste our life. That of course relates to this kind of diligence. And then secondly, of course, the diligence that that contemplation will bring about itself is, of course, diligence. And then finally, the contemplating death and impermanence will then allow us to practice continually, to have a very steady and continuous practice. So this is all going towards that great diligence, which is never satisfied.
내 좀대당 코로이 이민이 공부에 되는 예정계기를 했어. 또나 로도 남시 고명데 쩐지당 예중이 기용도 타마데 덴도시바데
덴도시바데. So the pendant super shiba country
근도 당보데 예중 제소 타는 자와 시샤 제니
ngama
예중 개발 제발랑 로도 남시 있어라 이 로도 남시 고명데 되는 예중 기용도 펜도 직대라도 당보 당보 펜도 니바데 되는 거랑 좀 다준 예부가 봐 고명데 이코노믹 서비스 고랑 펜도 미다바 고명데 고랑 펜도 되니 레전드 고명데 고랑 펜도 되니 고래님이 고명데 고랑 펜도 숨 쉬어서 하다지 또 뭐들 니바들 어디 되니 니말에 니바들 되래 니바들라 되니 되래 그래 다준 예부가 어떤 제발 세 미다바 공부이나 되니 체득이 신발로 레전드는 고래님이 공부이나 체치마 신발로 쓰다 신발로 니도와 이바들 숨바들라 되니 나랑 저기 탄다데 다준 예부가 올라 펜도스 체미다 발라 펜도스 레전드라 펜도스 고래님을 펜도스 해봐 펜도 시바 될라 되니 나랑 저기 탄다 준비다 이게 좀 얘기라
so there's the way this is all organized is that as Lama was saying before, they contemplating the different so there's the benefit of that we will there's the benefit of these four thoughts that turn the mind. First of all, that we will be able to give up attachment to this life, and then secondly, we will be able to give up attachment to the next life, and then thirdly, what Lama just explained just now is that it will allow us to generate diligence in that way that he was explaining with all this the other factors and benefit. That's the third benefit of the four thoughts that turn the mind. And then the fourth benefit of the four thoughts that turn the mind is that we will be able to finally generate renunciation, of course. So, any
준비당 예중 기그레스 당보레 다준예가와 단체미다반 이게 준비 기그레 라인바 아니 코르 레김르단 코르님이 예중 기그레스
so and contemplating the difficulty of finding the freedoms and advantages and death and impermanence will give rise to diligence, as Lama explained just now, and then contemplating karma, cause and effect, and the faults and suffering of samsara, the third and fourth thoughts that turn the mind, that will give rise to renunciation.
로도 넘버시 보디 공부이나 인데게 펜도만 보여요. 제가 로도 넘버시 파르타용데 팀이 레 당보바 니 당보 최ල 냠링기 최ල 냠슬랑게 저게기 냠슬랑게 다보지 요르데 최 코랑기 네슬렀다요나 드네 레 당보만 마이바 레닝바와 니나양 드네 냠린 체고바 같이 보이바 인데도와 로도 넘버시 보디 그런 치당 분나 레 당보 버기 냠린 지에서도 드림 당보 잡고 LKG 잡고도 오늘 초코랑게 나가 삼어야 보통 그죠 드네 냠린 잉바 제 서로에 냠린 잉바 속에 냠린 제거봐 같이 모두
So in this way the four thoughts of that turn the mind, this practice of the four thoughts that turn the mind have these really very important and powerful benefit, really great benefit for us, and is generally a practice that's done by beginners, sometimes kind of conceived that way. But if you think about the practice of Dharma as a whole and the whole path and so on, is also actually really important for experienced practitioners as well. They also get so much benefit and a need to practice these as well.
세상 아랑족이 아니 로다 남바시가 통중 제네 팀파 샤샤죠 말레스
So that being the case, we should not think that these practices are not important. This contemplation of the four thoughts that turn the mind, we shouldn't kind of look down on them and think of them as kind of small thing. We should consider them to be very important, really recognize their importance and put them into practice. So the masters of the past, they have they taught that the preliminary practices are in fact more powerful, more profound than the main part. And this refers to these common preliminaries of the four thoughts that turn the mind, and the other uncommon preliminaries such as refuge and so on.
Ngöndro around Ngöndro chudila tongchung chen shagrwa tishida zime tang sha on de tini ta tindegi midila tini ngoshile jang Ngöndro de saba chagde yor.
So generally the main part is in fact more powerful and profound than the preliminaries, but we have a tendency to disregard and look down on the preliminaries, not consider them to be so important. So since that is the case, this is one of the reasons they teach that the preliminaries in fact more important than the main part.
당한조 다저리냐 바카와 당한조 뭐시 투몽데 된 냠낸 제거를 된 냠낸 제비기 책디 다 돈바디 가르레스나 데라 다저니가 니스 게만다 기겐 강내장 다저테니 신도냐 바카 시비 책니기 나라더니 다저냐 바카와디 다 공당 상마 되나나 뒤디 된샤버레스.
So now to get into the main part of the practice of these four thoughts that turn the mind, we have the texts that we recite as part of the preliminary practices. And so the first thought that turns the mind, the difficulty of obtaining the freedoms and advantages, is taught in these first two lines that say, alas, they were so hard won, these freedoms and riches, obtained through accumulating their causes and conditions. So all of what we should actually be meditating on when we practice contemplating the difficulty of obtaining the freedoms and advantages, all of that is actually taught in these two lines.
당한조 Ngöndro 냠낸 책이라 그러나 나는 Ngöndro 냠낸 책이나 딱 가장 고니마 된 용매 qabla 당한조 드링 다저리냐 바카와기 냠낸 책이 되세이나 다 다저리냐 바카와기 책디 제만다기 규겐 간내장 다저르되는 신도냐 바카 라비 책디 그라 참 희한해 아니 근데 스테르된 다저리냐 바카와들 삼로 땅고 요레스 dom박하니 되는데 그요 말에 삼로 땅되고 그런 게 튀니 뒤즈데 같은데 다저리냐 바든죠 그래 연바데 삼로야고 식당에 되네 튼타토라 되네 되는 뒤도 보고 요레스 튼 직선이 손 칠라니 겨워도 발로는 데스 냠낸 지고 요레스.
So when we are doing this practice, when we're actually taking it up and doing our sessions of this preliminary practices, when we are at the stage of contemplating the difficulty of obtaining the freedoms and advantages in the course of doing these preliminary practices, then the way to do the session is to recite everything up to this point, do the session up to this point, and then recite these 2 lines. Alas, they were so hard won, these freedoms and riches obtained through accumulating their causes and conditions, and then spend a while contemplating the difficulty of obtaining the freedoms and advantages. Spend like the main part of the session doing that, not just reciting the words, but really contemplating what does it mean that we have obtained the freedoms and advantages, and really think about it well for a while. And then after we finished that meditation, then we go on through the rest of the text. With each session, I come closer and closer to the death, and so on. Yeah, so this is at the stage in doing the preliminary practices when we are focusing on the difficulty of obtaining the freedoms and advantages. This is how we should practice it. We recite everything up to those 2 lines, then recite those 2 lines, contemplate them for the main part of the session, for the longest part of the session. And then after we're finished that contemplation, we just recite everything else without spending too much time. Just go through it and then finish the session in that way. So this is how to arrange the session when you're focusing on the difficulty of obtaining the freedoms and advantages. So if you are spending 1 week contemplating the difficulty of obtaining freedoms and advantages, for example, then this is the way that you do that session for that entire week. If you're spending 1 hour in your session, then you will recite the text up to here and then spend about an hour contemplating the difficulty of obtaining the freedoms and advantages. And then when that hour session is coming to an end, then you go through the rest of the text, just recite it through. Yeah, so this is the way you should do every session when you're in that phase of contemplating the difficulties of obtaining the freedoms and advantages. So now to explain these words, the words of these 2 lines. So it says, alas, in the Tibetan, the order is the Tibetan, the order is alas, being obtained through accumulating their causes and conditions. So they put the first line second and the second line first, but it starts with alas. And so this word kema, or alas, it means it's a word that expresses a difficulty, like you're feeling some great difficulty and you're expressing that kind of sorrow or that feeling of having difficulty. Alas in English. Yeah, so in Tibetan, this word kema, which is translated by alas, this is the way they used to express this kind of feeling, and nowadays they have a different way of expressing it. In Tibetan, they would say aka, 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 but in the old times they used to say kema, not akaka. Yeah. And so the Lama is explaining this is like it's this expression of sadness. Yeah.
Kari kema labaresana. Tajurnya berarti tajur de pe masanya berkali kau imba sempat jual.
And what are we sad about? Why are we expressing this sadness? It's because these freedoms and riches, freedoms and advantages are so difficult to find. This is actually a sad thing.
Kangananzo tajurnya go na pe masa berkali kau ina. Manzuta semjogura kali khala tajurnya dinte kali kau samgira. Take dradi theon the kema labar.
Yeah, so we contemplate how difficult it is to obtain these freedoms and advantages. We have done so much to get here, to get these freedoms and advantages. So it has that sense of sadness that it took so much to get us here. So that's why we make this expression "kema" or "alas."
Dagisena nagilara. Yuginsena talwa dang jorwa tobeki yugin jorwa. Tele yugin lab.
So then continuing in the Tibetan, it says it was difficult for me to obtain.
Ngala yoba te segora ngaki sena. Ngala yoba talwa je jorwa chura te ani tegi yugin te toba chibi yugin se.
So yeah, it explains in the Tibetan that it has this word "I," which is not in English, but the idea is that we have obtained these freedoms and advantages, the 8 freedoms and the 10 advantages. So it says literally in Tibetan, it says it was so hard for me to attain these freedoms and advantages. So it was so hard for me to obtain these freedoms and advantages, which are obtained through accumulating their causes and conditions. So there's causes and conditions for obtaining each of these freedoms and advantages.
Judi karasana maranso talwa tobu yona tini judi gewa pesun spa shisa ku yor. Ani shidi kendela tini shi sudim dang molam number tabani yabu tabgo kore. Tindiji jugin la tene ani tajur tobu yorwa.
So the cause for obtaining the freedoms and advantages is really a perfect virtuous action, really excellent virtuous action that we have done. And then the conditions that it mentions for obtaining the freedoms and advantages is, first of all, the kind of a basis for the attainment, which is discipline, practice of discipline. And then in addition to that, we need to have made aspiration prayers. These are the causes and conditions.
강내장 수디 타 내기 탈줄 데라 칸데스네 삼로 땅에 떼바 이나양 유진 창마 점에 강내 대장 나버.
So again, the Tibetan is a little bit different in the literal sense. It says, however it may be, it kind of is the meaning. However it may be, or however, in whatever way I can think about it, is the idea. Yeah, these freedoms and advantages were so hard for me to obtain, which are obtained through the causes and conditions. So the sense is that whatever way we think about it, or whatever angle we think about it, however we think about it, it's always very clear that it's very difficult for us to attain these freedoms and advantages.
Yana nigi tajur tobe kyula samlo tanayare, yana nigi tajur tobe ki kienla samlo tanayare laba. Kana jangsu.
Yeah, so the sense of the Tibetan also is whether I think about it in terms of the causes to attain the freedoms and advantages, or whether I think about it in terms of the conditions to obtain the freedoms and advantages, whatever way I think about it, it's always very difficult. I always see and can tell, and it's always true that it's very difficult to obtain them.
태임바 선장 다줄 드부터베 신도 내장에 버까와레스 근데 다줄 때네 신도 있냐 버까스
균유는 캔유는
개와뇽뇽 되네 술dim뇽뇽 되네 몰람뇽뇽 잡이나 된저 뇽뇽으로 근데 뇽뇽 기타 다줄 덕그 말아 대체상 다 다줄 모두 다줄이 신도 있냐 버까와레도 교양 뇽뇽 모두 면도 깨양 뇽뇽 모두 메디타 다줄 더베 갈래 거버레라
and then
규딩한 저 개와 표준 소바 사고를 라브랑 아주 다 다저 도베기 규 개와 표준 소바 사고 개와 망보지 사고래라 다 끼엔디 가래 시출dim 송고래라 끼엔디 가래 몰람미하고 자고 그래라 딘데 숨라 땐데 딘이 규겐 딘데라 땐데 아니 먼저 다저 도고 거라 다 딘데 숨데 지겐디 뇽뇽마도 요 말에 메디 다저 도베 갈래 가버려서라 다저 딘이 신드냐 버가스.
Yeah, so it says these freedoms and riches were so hard won, so difficult to obtain. So if we have a sense of this, is that if we have only a small amount of the causes for obtaining the freedoms and riches, or only a small amount of the conditions, it won't be enough to obtain them. And also, there's not many people that have the proper causes and conditions to obtain the freedoms and advantages. That is the sense of this. These lines here is that. They're hard won in that it requires like a perfect, really excellent virtuous action. You need the full cause, not just a little bit of the cause, and it requires the foundation, the basis of discipline and the aspiration prayers as the condition. So in that way, it's very difficult to obtain them because a little bit of those causes and conditions won't suffice, and also there's most people are not able to gather the full causes and conditions.
네, 유대 아니 야세시와라기 전에 네 출dim라 유샤요래 배자 카시에나라 유대 기회 수남 촉사발라더니 유샤요래 야세시와라 가르정도 토리 균이 출dim 레시메 송래 토리 개버체나 출dim 송구요래 소다 유대 출dim라샤도 유 출dim라샤온데 겐디 아니 개와사바다 몰람 개바들라 샤구요래 양 유대 개와사발라 샤바이나 아니 출dim당 몰람 타바티 겐라 샤구요래.
So Shantideva, his view on this is that the cause of obtaining the freedoms and advantages is actually discipline, and he has one line that says the basis or the cause for attaining this precious human life, the basis of attaining the higher realms is discipline, and then the conditions for Shantideva would then be the accumulating that excellent virtue and the aspiration pairs. The yeah, and then so that's according to Shantideva. And then if you have according to the other way to look at it, the other view, it is the excellent virtue, which is the cause of attaining the precious human life and the freedoms and advantages. And then according to that view, the other two are put in the other place. It's the discipline and the aspiration prayers are the condition. Yeah, so and this is written in our text there, the causes and conditions. So we have to understand what those are and distinguish those two. So in order to gain this freedoms and riches or freedoms and advantages, we need these causes and conditions. So this is the sense of these lines, is that without those specific causes and conditions, we cannot attain the freedoms and riches of the precious human life. Yeah, without those causes and conditions, we can't obtain it. So this is the way in which it's difficult to obtain.
Le 당보바 마임바 장방원 송기 강사이나 책 디니라 땐데 테네 다저니 발가와 텐데 상마 또 어떻게 얘나양랑 저 테네 장방원라 마송바 le 당보바이나 테네 다저니 발가와 텐다든 좀 낭로라 띵 사브로 당데 낭로 도데 테네 장고고요.
So if somebody is not a beginner but somebody who has already trained a good amount, then they can just read these lines and get the full kind of effect and benefit of them. But if we are beginners, then and we haven't put in a lot of training, then we have to go deep into the words and really understand them in detail.
디나라 가리송에서나 디니 규단견 가와티나양 다저딩에 바카와레 송샤라 타식 도도라디 식 도도딩 먼저 시작 고tuk 말와 le 당보바 강사기 다 리파이네 농보 요긴 강사 장방원성의 강사에는 책들 다운데 참만하고도.
Because these words here, when we read them, alas, they were so hard won, these freedoms and riches obtained through accumulating the causes and conditions. It's just a kind of a bunch of words. If we haven't trained and don't have a good level of understanding, then it's in a way it's just kind of a bunch of words. We can get the meaning, but it's hard to really get the full meaning and the full import of them as beginners. But if we have trained a lot and already trained and are very sharp about these things, then we will be able to read these lines and really get the full profound meaning of them. Do you think that you will be able to fully realize and understand the meaning of the difficulty of obtaining the freedoms and advantages just by reading these lines? I think it's probably not. It's very difficult to do that. So this is why we have to go into these words and the concepts in detail and go very deep into them. And if we do that, if we go into detail into the profundity and very careful and extensive detail about these words in these lines, and once we have done that, then after having done that, when we read them, immediately all of those meaning, all that profound meaning will be able to come to us just by reading them. So there's many ways to explain the difficulties of finding the freedoms and advantages. There's many different commentaries and explanations on that. but I find this verse by Shantideva that says these freedoms and advantages are extremely difficult to find, and they are the means for accomplishing the purpose of human life. And if I don't take advantage of them now, how will I be able to get them again in the future? There's this verse there that is by Shantideva, written by Shantideva. So I think this verse is a very effective way to explain this. It has all the words are complete and the meaning is all complete there in this verse. So the first line there is, it's so hard to find this opportunity and fortune, or freedom and advantages, just different way to translate the same words. This is teaching the first concept, which is the difficulty in obtaining the freedoms and advantages. And then the second line there that says, whereby the aim of beings may be gained, that is communicating, that's explaining the fact that when we do obtain these freedoms and advantages, how great the benefit is, how meaningful and beneficial it is to have those freedoms and advantages. And then the third line that says, if now I fail to turn it to my profit, this refers to the fact that we have to take the essence of the freedoms and advantages. We have to really put them to use and not waste them, take the real meaning and purpose of the freedoms and advantages on the one hand. And then on the other hand, this line teaches how if we don't put them to use, what a great loss it would be. And then the fourth line there that says, how could such a chance be mine again? This refers to, this is explaining how later on, after this life, how it would be very difficult to obtain these freedoms and advantages again. These four lines have so much meaning in them. They're very profound, with so much meaning packed in there. So the first line, so hard to find this opportunity and fortune. This can go into it in 5 angles, 5 different topics. First of all, there is the nature of this precious human life, which is the opportunity or freedoms, freedom or opportunity, you can translate that. And then the kind of special features of the precious human life, which, the special features of the precious human life is the second one. Then the third one is the explaining the difficulty in terms of the cause of the precious human life. Then the fourth is explaining it in terms of the analogies or examples. And the fifth is explaining it in terms of numbers. So as far as this freedoms and advantages, from the point of view of the students, of the disciples, they need to learn them and understand them. And from the point of view of the teacher, the guru, he has to be able to explain them.
Jamyang tabashi dubar chepala drubi tin kandechi kugu yore sna tani tandangarando tal jor shebati kugu yore.
So the reason why we as disciples have to learn and understand the precious human life and the difficulty of obtaining the freedoms and advantages, and why the guru has to teach that to us, is that in order to attain the state of awakening, the level of a Buddha, we need to have the kind of perfect practice or excellent Dharma practice. And in order to have that really effective, excellent Dharma practice, we need the support for that. So it is taught in a text that the life with the freedoms and advantages is the support for the Dharma, for practicing the Dharma. So this is, if we have the 8 freedoms and 10 advantages, then this is what will allow us to practice the Dharma. This is the support for practicing the Dharma. This gives us the ability, the capacity to practice the Dharma. So these 18 freedoms and advantages are basically the kind of conditions, the conditions that allow us to practice the Dharma. In order to practice the Dharma, we need the right conditions, right? So this is what these are. So for example, we have for example, if we think about a table, in order to make the table, to have the proper table, and to make that proper table, we need all the conditions and all the necessary things to do that. We need the wood, we need the glue, and the nails, and the carpenter, and all these things, the saw, and whatever it is. And we need all those conditions or the kind of necessities to make the table. If we don't have all those necessities and conditions, we won't be able to make the table right. And just in the way that if we don't have those conditions and requirements to make the table, if we don't have the requirements and conditions to practice the Dharma, we won't be able to do it. We won't be able to practice the Dharma.
다 추기 튕전데 가르쳐송 달로한게 조르와 추창고데 추기 튕전 차송 된지지 튕전 여바이나 다 추양 답을 듣고.
And so the conditions for practicing the Dharma are, of course, the 8 freedoms and the 10 advantages, this 18 freedoms and advantages. Those are the conditions or the necessities that we need to practice the Dharma. And if we have those necessities, then we will be able to accomplish the Dharma really well and perfectly.
하지 저주단데 밀리림버체 마임바 신시기 되네 코나바기 되네 추치 두고되어 두면다 되는 야성성기 나는 교쇼 튼로르다 튼로기 되네 담배치 양타바 두고되어 두고민도 가래 콜라 다르게 저주 요 말에
if we are some being that doesn't have these 18 freedoms and advantages, I don't think we'd be able to practice the Dharma if you think about it, right? We don't have the conditions. Like, for example, one of the worst of the 3 lower realms, this worst type of being of 3 lower realms is the animals. They don't have the proper conditions, this 18 freedoms and advantage to practice the Dharma, so they're not able to do that.
최양 타바 주바이나 근데 주비 고급남 템바디 간다실라 땡기랬으나 다제 저주 됨베 밀리 뭐지도 딜라 땡긴다 딜라 고급이요 디 마임바딜라 고급이요 말 최양 타바 주베기
So what is the situation in which someone would have the opportunity to practice the Dharma? That situation is to have all of these 18 freedoms and advantages. If we have all of these 18 freedoms and advantages, then we have the chance, we have the opportunity to practice the Dharma.
대인디 땅랑조 최양 타바 제발라 네바도 되네 할와게 주와주 되네 적게 상만 참고를 했으나 되네 참고비요.
So that being the case, if you ask the question, in order to practice the Dharma well, practice it properly and practice it well, do we need all of these 18 freedoms and advantages? And the answer is yes, absolutely yes. We need all of those 18 freedoms and advantages.
된대지 달와지 주와주 나는 찍마 상바이나 최양 타바데 두베 깔래 가보 차고요. 최둑둑거려데 최양 타바 둑둑 말.
So if we don't have all of those 18 freedoms and advantages, it's very difficult to practice the Dharma. It may be possible without one of them. If we don't have all 18, it may be possible to practice in one way or another to some extent, but to really practice properly, it's not possible.
당부 치마가라 고기도와 드네 추고기도와 드네 자고기도와 드네 오마고기도와 대가 나시 꼽고기도와 메탑고기도와 드네 나는 찍마사나 장하는 뭐 약부지 차그래왜 정말와.
So for example, to make just 1 cup of tea, sweet tea, for example, we need all the conditions and requirements for that. We need the water, we need the sugar, the tea itself, the milk, the cup, we need the stove and the fire in order to cook the tea. We need all of those things. And if we don't have one of those requirements to make the tea, then it's impossible to make the sweet tea.
딘제 표성 속바지 상고도와 다 추기 딘제 표성 속바 상와디 다와지 주로치 상와데.
So we need to practice. We need to accomplish the Dharma in a really excellent way. We need to practice the Dharma really properly and really well. And so what we need to do that, the requirement to do that are these 18 freedoms and advantages.
탈와지 저러와지 당때 미르를 뭐체디라 대송도 렉나 타로에 조신 뮤디인 녀나 코르웨팅도 뮤디인 소르다 나랑서 약부지 토부 유 삼바이나 탈와지 저러와지 때문에 밀리디기다 약부지 토투 그래서 타르비 푸싱자고 그래서 잠적에 파롤란 로아이나 트니 푸싱 저러와나시레서 탈와지 저러와지.
So there's a saying that says, this human life or the human body, the human life is a ship that will allow us to reach the shores of liberation. And this human life also is a stone that will sink us into the lower realms. So if we want to attain liberation and follow the path to liberation, then this human life, this human body is the means to do that. It is like the ship that will bring us to the shore of liberation.
대인지 기랑수도 가리시고 구열에 달와지 저러와주디 기랑수 시고 구열에 가리시고 구열에 달와지 저러와주디 최양 타바 주베 땡시 튠진레도 삼바디 켄나바 시고 구열에 개회 신년지 근데 튠진 레스파레 밀라라고 구열에.
So this is what we all have to understand, is that the requirement, necessities to practice the Dharma properly are these 18 freedoms and advantages. These are the support, the requirements to do that. And so we all need to understand that as students, and then the teacher, for his part, has to explain that to us.
상지지 고방 톱고 요래 상지지 고방 톱고 요나 담배체 양 타바시 두고 담배체 양 타바시 두발라 튕긴 다 달와지 주로주 임바데 땡가랑 속에 시고 요래스.
So the basic point is that we all have to attain the state of awakening, the state of a Buddha. This is what we all want to attain. And in order to attain that, we have to have a very the proper practice. We have to be able to practice very well and have our practice be very effective. In order to have our practice be very effective and to practice very well, for that we need the proper support, which is the 18 freedoms and advantages. These 18 freedoms and advantages are the support for having for being able to practice properly, practice well. They're the kind of conditions or the necessities to be able to do that.
당아랑서 최양 타바 제고구에나 당부 가르고구도 달 저러스는 책임이 고구도와 책임이 나는 당부 가르도 달 시바도와 당아랑서 최시 제고구에 최시 양 타바 도바르 제발라 당부 가르고구도스나 달디 도구도와.
So these conditions and requirements for practicing the Dharma are the freedoms and advantages. So first of all, what do we need is the first word there, which is the freedoms, or also you can translate as the opportunities.
저만의 경우 정말 최시 제고도 다 가르치고도스나 당부 다 도구도스 하고 보다.
So we may think sometimes, at some point, we may think, I have to practice the Dharma. I really want to practice the Dharma. And then you should understand, in order to practice the Dharma, what do I need? I need the freedom to do that, the opportunities to do that.
달 쉐바데 하고 다 당부 달 쉐바시 아니 뒤즈 콤바 여바 밀혀버라요 혀버 여바 뒤즈 여바시라 달라.
So first, for the meaning of this word, freedoms, which is the Tao in Tibetan, what that means, basically, it means having the time, having the free time, and having the leisure to be able to do something, the free time and the leisure, the opportunity to do something.
전에 최식 제겐제나 최식 제게이나 전에 당부 메디라 뒤즈고고요. 뒤에서 해보시고 그 유나 그 지에 두고를 모두 코페 텔와 사버지나 취지 두고 말아.
So in order to practice the Dharma, we need this freedom or opportunity. We need to have free time to ourselves that we can spend. If we don't have the kind of free time, on the other hand, if we are really busy with the too many things, then there's no way to practice the Dharma, is there?
먼저 등산하게 라기와 키랑라 디제에 키랑라 디제에 남니 자살을 들었기도 콜라 디제면은 그 자살을 들어도
It's just as we say in our everyday when we talk to each other every day in the everyday kind of language. Oh, do you have time today? Let's go to town today. And if that person doesn't have time, then they won't be able to go into town, right?
달생인데 시선 달생인데 콤바 뒤즈에 봐식라 말한 허보에 봐식라 내가 전에 제초조에 봐식라 다 달생이도.
So this is the meaning of that term, the freedoms, or as is translated in the verse on this slide, the opportunities, which is Tao in Tibetan. This is the basic meaning of that term, is the free time, the ability to, the quality of having the time to do something, that if there's something that needs to be done, you will have the leisure or the time to do that.
다 달시바데 직절된 중서 다 단답값을 봐봐 추억이 난 달시바데 가르스나 괜히 최잼 갈스고래 최잼이 도박이 잘와 잡아요 봐 된전이 줄 도구고요.
So this is the meaning of that word, Tao, or freedoms. This is the kind of explanation of that word itself. But then when we get into what this term means in terms of the Dharma, it refers to having not being in a situation where we don't have the ability or the leisure or time to practice the Dharma. It refers to the opposite of that situation.
제메토바데레 도구구요나 제메토바데 가제여서나 미곰베 네기에스요. 미곰 네기엘레 타르나 탈와 톱세그로.
So the situations in which we are not able to practice the Dharma, or these are called the 8 situations which lack opportunity, the 8 situations without opportunity. So if we are free of those 8 situations, then we will be, this is called obtaining the freedoms, obtaining the opportunities.
단다 예전난게 달리셔바디 이 달와디 거할 고고 열었으나 미금 네 겔레 타르베 달와 톱스바들 고고 미금 겔레 타르베 달와 톱스 예전나와 열.
So in the context of this verse, the meaning of this word freedoms in Tibetan, the Tao, this refers to the attainment. It refers to being free of the 8 situations of no opportunity, or the 8 situations without any opportunity, and attaining the state of freedom. Okay, so this is the end of the teaching today. Now we will recite the dedication and aspiration together. Tamje Sigbani, Tomne Nebe, Donam Paljene, Kenga Nachi, Balan Drupai, Sibe Tole, Roan Roara, Shon.